You think you're too smart to get scammed. You really do. You got a smartphone in your pocket that can access the sum of human knowledge in seconds. You've seen the emails from Nigerian princes. You laugh at those obvious phishing attempts. You're educated, informed, careful, and that's exactly what they're counting on. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The scams that are draining bank accounts and ruining lives today aren't new. They're not the product of the digital age or artificial intelligence or cryptocurrency. They're ancient. Some of them are thousands of years old. And they work on you for the exact same reason they worked on a merchant in ancient Rome, a peasant in medieval England, or your great-great-grandmother in 1920s New York. The technology changes. The psychology doesn't. This isn't a story about stupid people falling for obvious tricks. This is a story about how human nature has a blueprint, and how con artists have been reading that blueprint since before we had written language. This is about why the oldest scams in history are still pulling in billions of dollars every single year. And yes, this is about how you've probably fallen for at least one of them without even realizing it. Because here's what nobody wants to admit. The scams that work best aren't the ones that trick stupid people. They're the ones that exploit the universal features of human psychology. The ones that turn our strengths into weaknesses. The ones that make smart people do dumb things. So let's go back, way back, to understand why you're still vulnerable to tricks that predate electricity, let alone the internet. Picture Rome in 300 BC. No internet, no electricity, no phones. But if you walked through the forum, past the marble columns and shouting merchants, you'd see something strangely familiar. There's a man at a stall, and he's creating a crowd. He's holding up a beautiful vase, turning it slowly so it catches the light. From Egypt, he announces, crafted by the royal artisans themselves. Worth 10 gold pieces, but today, because I must leave Rome by sunset, I'm letting it go for just 3. People gather. They examine it. It looks genuine. One person buys, then another. The crowd pushes forward, afraid they'll miss out. You know what happens next? The vases are fake. The Egyptian trader disappears. And somewhere in that crowd, several people are walking home furious at themselves, clutching worthless clay, unable to explain to their spouses why they just spent 3 gold pieces on garbage. This scam has a name now. The fiddle game, or pigeon drop, or sometimes just the hustle. But it didn't have a name back then. It was just business. Dishonest business, sure, but remarkably effective business. Now travel forward to medieval England. A man approaches you on a road. He's well-dressed, frantic. His carriage is broken down just beyond the bend. He explains. He's a merchant carrying valuable goods to London, but he needs coin immediately to pay the wheelwright. He'll give you this ring, pure silver with his family crest, worth £5 surely. You give him £1 now, help him get to London, and when you arrive there tomorrow, you can find him at this address, and he'll redeem the ring for £6. A profit for your kindness. You might hesitate, but he seems genuine, desperate, and you examine the ring. It feels heavy, looks real, so you do it. You hand over the money. The ring is pewter. The address doesn't exist. And you've just experienced a scam that already had a century-long track record when it got you. Let's go even further back. Ancient Greece, around 400 BC, a philosopher named Hegestratos takes out a large loan using his ship full of cargo as collateral. The deal is simple. If the ship sinks, he doesn't have to pay back the loan. It's an ancient form of insurance. So Hegestratos does the logical thing. He tries to sink his own ship. He waits until night, sends his crew to sleep, and starts drilling holes in the hull. The plan is to escape on a lifeboat with his crew, claim the ship sank accidentally, keep the loan money, and secretly sell the cargo he'd already offloaded before the voyage. The crew wakes up. They realize what's happening. Hegestratos, in a panic, jumps overboard and drowns. The crew manages to save the ship. But here's the thing. This wasn't a new trick. Hegestratos was just bad at it. Maritime insurance fraud was already so common that ancient Greek lenders knew to write specific clauses against it. The scam was already old when Hegestratos tried it. These aren't just fun historical anecdotes. They're proof of something deeper, something that should genuinely concern you. From ancient Rome to ancient Greece, to medieval England, across cultures and centuries, the same patterns emerge. The same tricks work. And when we catalog these ancient scams and compare them to what's happening today, we find something chilling. They're still here. Not similar versions. The exact same scams, beat for beat, move for move. The fake product that seems too good to pass up. The stranger with the emergency who needs your help and your money. The insurance fraud. The investment that promises incredible returns. The spiritual medium who can contact your dead relatives. The healer with a miracle cure. All of these existed before Jesus walked the earth. All of them are running right now. Today, probably within a few miles of where you're sitting. The question isn't whether these scams are old. The question is, why do they still work? Let's talk about your brain for a moment. Your brain is objectively an incredible machine. It processes millions of bits of information every second. It can recognize a face in a fraction of a second. It can learn languages, create art, solve complex problems, feel love. But it's also ancient. The core parts of it, the parts that handle fear and trust and desire and social bonding, those parts haven't changed much in about 50,000 years. Your emotional processing system is Stone Age technology running in a digital world. And scammers know this. Every successful scam exploits one or more of what we might call the universal levers. These are the built-in features of human psychology that we all share. Not weaknesses exactly, more like vulnerabilities in the operating system. And they're vulnerabilities because they're connected to survival mechanisms that usually help us. Let's break them down. The urgency lever. Remember that merchant in ancient Rome who had to leave by sunset? That wasn't just story color. It was the entire mechanism of the scam. Urgency shuts down rational thinking. It has to. If you're facing a threat, you don't have time to carefully weigh all the options and consult multiple sources. Your ancestors who stopped to thoroughly analyze whether that shadow was a tiger or just a weird tree branch, they got eaten. The ones who made fast decisions and ran first, asked questions later, they survived and had children. You're descended from the paranoid, ones who made snap decisions under pressure. So when someone creates artificial urgency, limited time offer, act now, this deal expires in 1 hour, they're hacking a survival mechanism. Your rational brain knows you should slow down and think. But your ancient brain is screaming at you to act before the opportunity disappears forever. This is why scammers always include a time element. Always. The fake IRS agent needs payment immediately or you'll be arrested. The tech support scammer needs remote access to your computer right now or you'll lose everything. The investment opportunity closes today. They're not giving you urgency. They're weaponizing your own biology against you. The authority lever. Humans are hierarchical social animals. We survived because we could organize into groups with leaders and followers. A child who didn't listen to adults didn't survive long. A tribe member who ignored the chief's warnings got the whole group killed. So we have this deep, almost automatic response to authority. When someone in a position of power tells us something, we tend to believe it. When someone who seems to know more than us gives an instruction, we tend to follow it. The Roman merchant exploited this by claiming the vase came from royal artisans. The medieval scammer wore fine clothes that signaled high social status. The modern phone scammer impersonates the IRS or Microsoft or your bank. They're not just lying. They're triggering your submission to authority figures. And here's the really insidious part. The smarter you are, the more you trust authority in specialized domains. A doctor in the emergency room tells you something medical. You listen because they're the expert and you're not. That's actually rational. But it also means that when someone convincingly poses as an expert, your intelligence works against you. You correctly identify that you should defer to expertise, but you incorrectly identify who has that expertise. The reciprocity lever. There's an anthropologist named Robert Cialdini who spent his career studying persuasion. One of his key findings is that humans have an almost compulsive need to return favors. Someone gives you something, you feel obligated to give back. Someone does you a kindness, you want to reciprocate. This is how social bonds form. This is how tribes stayed cohesive. You help someone skin a deer, they help you build a shelter. This reciprocal altruism is fundamental to human survival. Scammers exploit this relentlessly. The free sample, that comes with a high-pressure pitch. The stranger who helps you pick up something you dropped, then asks for money for their own emergency. The romance scammer who showers you with attention and emotional support before asking for financial help. They're creating a debt in your mind, and your brain desperately wants to pay that debt, even though it was never real. The consistency lever. Once you make a small commitment, you feel pressure to stay consistent with that commitment. This is actually a useful trait. Consistency allowed our ancestors to follow through on plans, maintain social relationships, and build reputations as reliable people. But scammers use this against you through a technique called the foot in the door. They get you to say yes to something small first. Can you answer a quick question? Can you confirm some information? Would you be interested in principle? Each small yes makes the next yes easier, because now you've established yourself as someone who says yes to this person. And to change it would mean admitting you were wrong or being inconsistent, and your brain really doesn't want to do that. This is why scams often involve multiple steps. The ancient merchant created a crowd first, got people examining the vase, got them asking questions. Each of those interactions was a micro-commitment that made the final purchase more likely. The social proof lever. When everyone else is doing something, we assume it must be correct or safe. This was extremely adaptive. If everyone in your tribe was running in one direction, you should probably run that way too, even if you don't see the danger yet. If everyone avoided eating a certain plant, you should avoid it too, even if it looks delicious. The problem is that social proof can be faked. Remember that Roman merchant? The reason he created a crowd wasn't just for visibility. It was to trigger social proof. When other people are examining the vase, when someone else buys first, it signals to your brain, this is safe. This is normal. Other people are doing it. Modern scammers do this with fake reviews, with purchase followers, with testimonials from people who don't exist. They create the illusion of social proof because they know your brain will automatically trust it. The scarcity lever. We want what we can't have. Or more accurately, we fear losing access to things more than we enjoy gaining access to them. This is loss aversion, and it's one of the most powerful psychological forces that exists. Your ancestors who carefully guarded their limited resources survived. The ones who were careless with food, with tools, with shelter, they died. So when something is scarce, or when we're told we might lose access to something, we panic a little. And in that panic, we make decisions we wouldn't otherwise make. Only 3 left in stock. This offer will never be available again. I have another buyer interested. These phrases are everywhere because they work. The Roman merchant had to leave by sunset. The medieval con man had to fix his carriage immediately. The modern scammer tells you this investment opportunity closes today. It's always the same lever, always the same panic, always the same exploitation of loss aversion. Here's what should terrify you. These levers don't stop working when you know about them. You can read this section, nod along, understand every word, and still fall for a scam that uses these exact techniques. Because these aren't logical failures. They're emotional reflexes. They're hardware, not software. You can't just uninstall them. The ancient merchant understood human psychology without ever taking a psychology class. The medieval con artist knew how to manipulate social dynamics without reading Cialdini. They figured out what worked through trial and error over generations. And what they learned still works. Not because people are stupid, but because people are human. Let's get specific. Let's look at how these ancient blueprints are running right now. Today, in forms you've definitely encountered. The pig butchering scam. In ancient China, there were con artists who would court wealthy widows, gain their trust and affection over months, and then convince them to invest in fake business ventures before disappearing. Today, this has evolved into what investigators call pig butchering. The metaphor is grotesque, but accurate. The scammer fattens up the victim before the slaughter. It starts on a dating app, or social media, or sometimes a wrong number text. An attractive person shows interest in you. They're charming, attentive, interested in your life. The relationship develops slowly, Naturally, they never ask for money early on. Then, casually, they mention how well they're doing with cryptocurrency investments, or forex trading, or some other investment vehicle you might not fully understand. They show you their returns. They offer to help you get started. Just a small amount at first. You invest, and you see returns. Real returns that you can track on an app or website. So you invest more. Maybe you even withdraw some profit successfully, which proves it's legitimate. Then you invest even more. Maybe you take out a loan or drain your savings because the returns are so good and your romantic partner is so encouraging. And then, when you try to withdraw your money, you can't. The site has problems. There are fees. There are taxes. You need to deposit more to unlock your funds. By the time you realize it's a scam, hundreds of thousands of dollars are gone. Sometimes millions. And the person you thought you were in a relationship with, they were never real. Just a profile, maybe using stolen photos, operated by someone in a scam compound on the other side of the world. This scam has stolen billions. With AB, billions of dollars from people who weren't stupid, from lawyers and doctors and engineers, from people who thought they were too smart to fall for something like this. The tech support scam. Remember the medieval con artist with the broken carriage? The desperate merchant who needed help right now? Today, that's a phone call or a pop-up on your screen. Warning, your computer has been infected with a virus. Call this number immediately. Or it's someone calling you, claiming to be from Microsoft or Apple or your internet provider. There's a problem with your account. There's suspicious activity. There's a security breach. They need to fix it right now. You call the number, or you take the call, and they guide you through giving them remote access to your computer. They show you scary-looking things on your screen that are actually completely normal. They convince you that you're in danger, and then they sell you fake security software, or they steal your financial information directly. This works because of urgency plus authority plus a dash of fear. Your ancient brain hears danger to your resources and expert offering help, and it wants to act fast. Hundreds of millions of dollars are stolen this way every year. The fake rental scam. In the 1800s, a con artist named William Thompson would approach wealthy men in New York City and, after some pleasant conversation, ask them, "Have you confidence in me to trust me with your watch until tomorrow?" Surprisingly often, they'd hand it over. Thompson would walk away and never return. The press called him the original confidence man. The term con artist comes from him. Today, the con artist builds confidence through a fake rental listing. Beautiful apartment, incredible price, perfect location. There's urgency, multiple people are interested. There's social proof, great reviews for the landlord. There's authority, official-looking documents. They can't show you the property in person because they're out of town, but they could do a video tour, or they'll have someone else show it to you. An accomplice or even an innocent tenant who has no idea their apartment is being used for a scam. You need to act fast or you'll lose it. You need to wire the deposit immediately. First month, last month, security deposit. The money disappears. The landlord was never real. And you show up on move-in day to discover the actual owner has never heard of you. This happens thousands of times every year, especially in tight rental markets where desperation runs high. The grandparent scam. For as long as there have been families, there have been people impersonating family members to gain trust and resources. Today, your phone rings late at night. It's your grandson, or the voice sounds like your grandson. He's in trouble. He was in a car accident, or he was arrested, or there's some emergency. He needs money wired immediately. And please don't tell mom and dad. He's embarrassed. The urgency is crushing. The fear is real. Your grandson needs help right now, so you wire the money. Except it wasn't your grandson. It was a scammer who learned enough about your family from social media to make it convincing. And now, with AI voice cloning, they don't even need to sound that much like your actual grandson. They can clone his voice from a short video he posted online. This scam is particularly cruel because it targets the elderly and exploits familial love. And it works because that love is real and powerful and clouds judgment in the moment. The fake charity scam. Throughout history, fake priests, fake monks, and fake holy men have collected donations for causes that didn't exist. Today, after every natural disaster, every tragedy, every viral story about someone in need, fake charities spring up like weeds. They have official sounding names. They have websites that look legitimate. They have emotional stories and photos. They accept donations online, making it easy to give. And the money goes into someone's pocket while real victims get nothing. This works because it exploits our genuine desire to help. And in the moment after a tragedy, when urgency and emotion are high, we don't always stop to verify. The job offer scam. In the 1920s, scammers would advertise work-from-home opportunities in newspapers. Send money for the starter kit or training materials, and you'll be able to earn great money at home. The kit would arrive, but it would be worthless, and the promised earnings would never materialize. Today, you apply for a remote job that sounds perfect. The interview is conducted over text or email. You're hired quickly, which should be a red flag, but you need the job, and they need someone urgently. Before you can start, you need to purchase equipment or software or pay for a background check or cover some other upfront cost. They'll reimburse you with your first paycheck, they promise. You send the money. The job disappears, and you realize too late that legitimate employers never ask new employees to pay for anything up front. The investment scam, ancient origin, Ponzi/pyramid schemes. This one goes back at least to the 1800s, though the most famous version is from 1920, when Charles Ponzi convinced thousands of people to invest in a scheme involving international postal reply coupons. The pitch was simple: invest with me, and I'll pay you 50% returns in 45 days. And at first, he did. Early investors got their returns exactly as promised. So they told their friends, and those friends invested, and they got their returns too. The secret? Ponzi wasn't actually investing the money in anything profitable. He was just paying early investors with money from later investors. As long as more money kept coming in, the scheme worked. But it was mathematically doomed to collapse, which it did, wiping out thousands of people. Today, this same structure appears in cryptocurrency schemes, in multi-level marketing companies, in high-yield investment programs, in fake Forex trading platforms. The pitch has barely changed. I found a secret way to generate incredible returns. Get in early. Tell your friends. It collapses the same way it always does. The early few make money. Everyone else loses everything. Notice the pattern? The technology changes. The specific story changes. But the emotional manipulation is identical. These aren't new scams with ancient inspiration. They're the same scams wearing modern clothes. Here's where this gets really uncomfortable. Right now, reading this, you probably feel pretty good. You're informed now. You know about the levers. You know about the scams. You understand how they work. And that feeling of understanding, that sense that you're now protected, that's part of the scam. There's a cognitive bias called the Dunning-Kruger effect, where people with a little bit of knowledge overestimate their expertise. But there's something even more dangerous at play here, something we might call awareness theater. You know that scams exist. You've seen the news stories. You've received the obvious phishing emails. You've been warned about the Nigerian prince. And because you spotted those obvious scams, because you deleted those emails and moved on with your day, you've built up a false sense of security. You think, I'm careful, I'm aware, I wouldn't fall for that. And that belief makes you more vulnerable, not less. Because the scams that actually get people aren't the obvious ones. They're not from princes in Nigeria who need your help moving millions of dollars. They're sophisticated, personalized, and they arrive at your weakest moment. Let me give you a real example. Sarah is a cybersecurity professional. She literally teaches people how to avoid scams as part of her job. She's smart, educated, trained in exactly this domain. She would never fall for a scam, right? One afternoon, she gets an email from what appears to be her bank. There's been suspicious activity on her account. Someone tried to make a large purchase in another state. Click here to verify your identity and secure your account. She knows this is a common phishing technique. She's taught courses on it, but there's something different this time. The email looks perfect. The formatting is exact. And crucially, she actually did travel to another state last week. So a fraud alert makes sense contextually. She hesitates. She considers calling the bank directly, but she's in the middle of a work deadline. she's stressed, and the email has a sense of urgency. Just click to verify. It'll take 2 seconds. She clicks. The website looks identical to her bank site. She enters her credentials to log in and verify. And in that moment, she just handed over her username and password to scammers. She realized her mistake within minutes. She immediately changed her passwords and called the bank. The damage was minimal, but the psychological damage was significant. "I knew better," she told a reporter who interviewed her later. "I teach this stuff, and I still fell for it. I felt like an idiot." But here's the thing. Sarah isn't an idiot. The scam worked because it was well-crafted and it arrived at a vulnerable moment. And her expertise actually worked against her in a subtle way. Because she thought she knew what scams looked like, and this one didn't match her mental model exactly. This is the meta scam. The scam that works because you think you're immune to scams. Research consistently shows that people who think they're unlikely to be scammed are actually more likely to fall for scams. Because they don't maintain appropriate vigilance. They don't double-check things they should double-check. They trust their initial judgment too much. Meanwhile, people who remain appropriately paranoid, who assume they could be fooled and therefore verify everything, those people are actually safer. There's also an issue of ego. Nobody wants to admit they've been scammed. It's embarrassing. It feels like a personal failing. So people don't report it, which means they don't warn others, which means the scam continues to work. And beyond that, there's a selection bias in what scams you hear about. You hear about the stupid-sounding ones, the absurd Nigerian prince emails, the obvious spelling errors, the ridiculous requests. You don't hear about the sophisticated ones, the ones that fool smart people. Those victims stay quiet out of shame. So you get a distorted view where scams seem like they only trick idiots. But the data tells a different story. The Federal Trade Commission reports that people with higher education levels and higher incomes lose more money to scams on average. Not because they're more targeted, though they are, but because they have more to lose and they fall for more sophisticated scams. The pig butchering scam, the one I mentioned earlier, the average victim is college-educated, middle-aged, financially successful. These aren't naive people. They're people who thought they were too smart to be fooled. There's also a temporal component to vulnerability. You're not equally susceptible to scams at all times. There are moments when your defenses are down. You just experienced a major life change. You just lost a job. You just went through a breakup. You just had a health scare. You're financially stressed. You're isolated and lonely. You're grieving. Scammers know this. The pig butchering scam targets people on dating apps because people on dating apps are often vulnerable, lonely, hopeful, wanting connection. The grandparent scam targets elderly people because they're often isolated. The fake charity scam strikes right after disasters because people are emotional and want to help. They're hunting for vulnerability, and everyone is vulnerable sometimes. The final piece of the meta scam is something called optimism bias. We tend to think bad things happen to other people, not to us. Car accidents happen to other people. Diseases happen to other people. Scams happen to other people. This isn't just arrogance. It's a necessary psychological defense. If you constantly believed you were at risk of everything bad happening, you'd never leave your house. So your brain protects you by making you feel safer than you statistically are. But that same protective mechanism makes you drop your guard. You think, that scam is obvious. I would never fall for that. And then a sophisticated variant arrives at your most vulnerable moment, and suddenly you're the statistic you thought you'd never become. Let's zoom out. Let's look at the bigger picture of what's really happening here. These scams persist not just because they exploit individual psychology, but because they exploit structural features of how society works. They reveal uncomfortable truths about power, trust, and information asymmetry. Every scam is fundamentally about information asymmetry. The scammer knows something you don't. They know the product is fake. They know the emergency isn't real. They know the investment is fraudulent, and they profit from that knowledge gap. This is why scams flourish in moments of transition and uncertainty. New technologies, new markets, new forms of communication. These create information asymmetries. Most people don't fully understand cryptocurrency or how international wire transfers work, but what their bank's actual security protocols are. Scammers exploit those knowledge gaps. The internet has made this exponentially worse. It's never been easier to reach millions of people. It's never been easier to create convincing fake identities. It's never been easier to appear legitimate without actually being legitimate. A website costs almost nothing to create and can look identical to a real company's site. A social media profile can be built in minutes with stolen photos. An email address can mimic an official one with a tiny change you won't notice. A phone number can be spoofed to appear as though it's coming from anywhere. The tools that connect us also enable those who would exploit us. And there's a darker pattern here. The victims often can't get help. If you wire money to a scammer overseas, it's gone. There's no credit card company to dispute the charge with. There's no way to reverse a wire transfer or a cryptocurrency transaction. Law enforcement is often powerless because the scammers are in different countries, operating from places where there's little cooperation with international authorities. This creates a feeling of powerlessness that extends beyond the financial loss. Victims feel violated, yes, but also abandoned by the systems that are supposed to protect them. Banks will often blame the victim. You authorize the transfer. Tech companies will shrug. It's not our responsibility to police every user. Law enforcement will say, there's nothing we can do. And scammers know this. They know that even if you figure out you've been scammed, there's likely no real recourse. So they operate with near impunity. There's also a class dimension to this. Sophisticated financial fraud targeting wealthy investors sometimes gets investigated. But the pig butchering victim who lost their life savings? The grandparent who wired money to fake kidnappers? They often get nothing beyond sympathy. The systems that exist to prevent and prosecute fraud are overwhelmed and under-resourced. For every scammer that gets caught, hundreds more operate freely. And even when scammers are caught, the victims rarely get their money back. This creates a terrible feedback loop. Scams are low risk and high reward for criminals. They proliferate. More people are victimized. But the shame and the lack of recourse means many victims don't report it. So the official statistics undercount the problem. So resources aren't allocated to fight it. So scammers continue to operate freely. We're living through a golden age of fraud. It's never been easier to be a scammer and never been harder to be protected from scams. And here's what should really concern you. It's getting worse. Artificial intelligence is making scams more convincing. Voice cloning means scammers can impersonate your family members with startling accuracy. Deepfake technology means video calls can be faked. AI-generated text means phishing emails can be grammatically perfect and personalized to you specifically. The tools that scammers use evolve faster than the tools that protect against them. It's an arms race, and the scammers are winning. But there's something even deeper going on. Something about the nature of trust in modern society. We live in a high-trust environment, at least in most developed countries. We trust that the food we buy won't poison us. We trust that the plane we board won't crash. We trust that the money in our bank account is actually there. This trust is necessary for society to function. If you had to personally verify everything, you'd never get anything done. So you rely on institutions, on regulations, on social norms. But that same trust makes you vulnerable. Because scammers don't play by the rules. They exploit your reasonable expectation that people generally tell the truth and that institutions generally work as they should. The ancient merchant in Rome exploited the same trust. The buyer assumed that a merchant in a public forum surrounded by other merchants wouldn't dare sell obviously fake goods. The social cost would be too high. But the merchant planned to disappear immediately, so there was no social cost. Today's scammers hide behind screens and anonymous identities. The social cost of their behavior is zero, and so they exploit your trust without fear of consequences. This is the pattern of power that runs through all of these scams. Power comes from being able to break the rules while others follow them. Power comes from information asymmetry. Power comes from impunity. The scammers aren't more intelligent than their victims. They're just playing a different game with different rules. So what do you do with all this information? You can't live in a bunker. You can't trust no one. You can't verify everything personally. Modern life requires trust. It requires making decisions with incomplete information. It requires some level of vulnerability. But you can be intelligently paranoid. First, understand that the oldest scams still work because they exploit universal features of human psychology. When you feel urgency, recognize that's probably manufactured. When someone claims authority, verify it through independent channels. When something seems scarce or too good to be true, that's a red flag, not an opportunity. Second, recognize your moments of vulnerability. When you're stressed, grieving, lonely, or desperate, that's when you're most susceptible. If possible, don't make major financial decisions in these moments. If you must, involve someone you trust to reality check you. Third, slow down. Almost every scam includes artificial urgency. The counter to urgency is deliberate slowness. Legitimate opportunities will still be there tomorrow. Legitimate emergencies can wait for you to verify. Take the time you need. Fourth, verify through independent channels. If someone claims to be from your bank, hang up and call the number on the back of your credit card. If someone sends you a rental listing, look up the property independently and contact the owner directly. If someone offers you an investment opportunity, research the company through sources they don't control. Fifth, understand that smart people get scammed. If you fall for something, it doesn't mean you're stupid. It means you're human. Report it. Warn others. Don't let shame prevent you from taking action. Sixth, educate the people you care about. Your elderly parents need to know about the grandparent scam. Your college-age kids need to know about fake job offers and rental scams. Your friends need to know about romance fraud and investment scams. The conversation is the defense. Scammers rely on silence and shame. Break that silence. But here's the hard truth. You can do everything right and still fall victim. Because these scams are sophisticated, they're evolving, and they exploit fundamental features of human nature that we can't simply turn off. What we can do is build better systems. We need tech platforms to take responsibility for the fraud that happens on their platforms. We need financial institutions to implement better protections for wire transfers and to take responsibility when their customers are tricked. We need law enforcement to dedicate more resources to investigating and prosecuting scammers, especially those operating internationally. We need regulations that actually hold companies accountable when their platforms become havens for fraud. We need international cooperation to go after scam operations wherever they exist. We need to remove the stigma around being scammed so that victims feel comfortable coming forward. But until those systems exist, the responsibility falls on us as individuals. And that's exhausting. It means being suspicious in a world where we want to be trusting. It means being slow in a world that rewards speed. It means being paranoid in a world that tells us to be optimistic. Here's the eternal lesson, the one that the ancients knew and we keep forgetting. Human nature doesn't change. The specific forms of deception evolve, but the underlying mechanisms remain constant. We want to believe. We want to trust. We want to help. We want to seize opportunities. We want to avoid losses. These aren't bugs in the human operating system. They're features. They're what make us human, what make us social, what make us capable of building civilizations. And that's exactly what makes us vulnerable. The Roman merchant exploiting trust in the forum. The medieval con artist exploiting compassion on the road. The modern scammer exploiting loneliness on a dating app. They're all doing the same thing. Finding the gap between how we want the world to work and how it actually works and profiting from that gap. You know what's truly ancient? Not just the scams, but the hope that we can educate our way out of them. The Romans had warnings about marketplace fraud. Medieval sermons warned about traveling con artists. Newspapers in the 1920s ran articles about common scams. We've always believed that if people just knew better, they wouldn't fall for these tricks. But knowledge isn't enough, because these scams don't target what you know. They target what you feel. They target your fear when you think your computer has been compromised, your love when you think your grandson is in danger, your hope when you think you found a romantic partner, your greed when you think you've found a miracle investment, your compassion when you think you're helping disaster victims. These are not shameful emotions to have. These are human emotions, the full spectrum of human experience weaponized against you. And so the scams persist. Generation after generation, century after century, the same patterns emerge. New faces, new technologies, same tricks. There's something almost mythological about it. Like these scams are archetypes, eternal patterns in the human story. The trickster who promises easy wealth. The shapeshifter who pretends to be someone they're not. The false authority who demands obedience. The tempter who offers forbidden knowledge or power. These figures appear in every culture's mythology because they represent something real about human experience. The eternal tension between trust and skepticism, between hope and caution, between connection and self-protection. The scammers are playing ancient roles in an ancient drama. And in some sense, we're all playing ours too. The person who wants to believe in good fortune. The person who wants to help someone in need. The person who wants to be special, chosen, lucky. But here's where the story can change. You're not powerless. You're reading this right now, which means you're more informed than most people. You know about the levers now. You know about the patterns. You understand that these scams are ancient and effective and still running. That knowledge won't make you immune, but it can make you more careful, more skeptical, more willing to pause and verify, more willing to say this seems wrong, even when you can't articulate exactly why. Trust your instincts when something feels off. That feeling exists for a reason. It's your ancient brain, the same one that kept your ancestors alive, warning you that something doesn't add up. And when you do encounter a scam, and you probably will at some point, remember that millions of people have been there before you. From ancient Rome to today, you're not alone. You're not stupid. You're human. The real tragedy isn't that these scams exist. The tragedy is that they isolate us. They make us feel ashamed and alone when we should feel angry and connected. Because we're all vulnerable to the same tricks. We all have the same psychological levers. We're all playing the same game, whether we know it or not. So talk about it. Share this information. Warn your friends and family. Break the silence that allows these scams to flourish. Create communities of informed skepticism where people can ask, does this seem legitimate? Without feeling stupid. The scammers want you isolated, ashamed, and silent. So be connected, shameless, and loud. Tell the story of the ancient merchant with his fake vases. Tell the story of the medieval con artist with his broken carriage. Tell the story of how the same tricks that worked in 300 BC are still working today. Make it common knowledge that smart people get scammed, that education isn't protection, that vulnerability is universal. Because here's the final truth. These scams will never completely disappear. As long as humans are humans, with all our beautiful, messy, exploitable emotions and instincts, there will be people who try to take advantage. But we can make it harder for them. We can build awareness. We can build systems. We can build communities of mutual protection where we look out for each other. The oldest scams still work. But so does the oldest defense. People taking care of people. Communities sharing information. The young protecting the old. The informed warning the uninformed. Humans being human in the best possible way, not the worst. That Roman merchant disappeared into the crowd with his money and his fake vases. But somewhere in that same forum, someone else was warning their friend about him. Someone was saying, I heard about this trick. Don't fall for it. Someone was sharing the story so the next person would be safer. That's still happening today. That's what this video is. That's what you're doing when you share this information. That's the countermeasure to the eternal scam, the eternal warning. So yes, the oldest scams still work. They exploit the unchanging features of human psychology. They've worked for thousands of years, and they'll probably work for thousands more. But you don't have to be their next victim. Slow down. Verify. Trust your instincts. Protect your vulnerable moments. Share what you know. And remember that falling for a scam doesn't make you stupid. It makes you human. And being human, with all the trust and hope and compassion that entails, is still worth it. Even in a world where the oldest tricks still work, where con artists still exploit our best qualities, where the eternal scam continues its eternal run. Even then, being human is worth it. Just be a careful human, a skeptical human, an informed human, because the scammers are counting on you not being those things. Prove them wrong.